Today I'm very excited to teach you some awesome church history that's important to us still today. Let me tell you why. If you happen to be a Protestant or come from a confessional faith or an independent church or non-denominational, you look at the Catholics with great skepticism and you say, what's the deal with Mary? Like, why are they worshiping her? We're told that there's only one mediator between God and man, and it's Jesus Christ. Something they're doing over there is fishy. And if you're a Catholic, guys, we're not worshiping Mary. We venerate her. No. Let me explain to you what it even means. So yeah, here's the funny part. Technically, according to church history, all Christian denominations abide by the doctrine that comes out of what we're going to talk about today. It was called the Council of Ephesus. And this is part 19 of the New Christian History on the Church. If you haven't seen the first 18 parts, they're in this awesome playlist. Here, first, let me give you some background. In the early 300s, the Emperor Constantine rose to power in the Roman Empire. He would eventually unify both East and West. And one of the first things he did was to establish the Christian faith and begin to institutionalize it, bringing it into daily life. The reason why Constantine institutionalized the Christian faith is because it became the predominant belief system in the Roman Empire. The poor believed it, the middle class believed it, and even the political class came to believe that Christianity was the way. So Constantine called together the bishops and leaders of the church and began to ask them, how do you do this? How do we institutionalize the church into the empire? And they said, well, Emperor, what we do is we call together these groups called synods and councils and regional bishops and those from metropolitan areas, and they come and we discuss the issues and we build a consensus upon it. So he said, fine, we'll do that. Come to my summer palace at Nicaea. Now they were greatly skeptical. He sent out 1,800 invitations and only about 250 or 300 people showed up, and it was brave for them to do so, for they had ears missing, they had been blinded, knife marks, burned, property confiscated. And what they decided at the Council of Nicaea would make history. So all the bishops gathered at the summer palace in Nicaea. Many of them argued because they came to a point where they were trying to identify how exactly Jesus was the Son of God. He was human, he had been a person, but he was also clearly divine. Some of them argued, he's heterousios. He's the Son of God, but not co-eternal or co-equal. He's a different substance than God the Father. And the others ranted and raved and said, no, he's homoousios. He is of a similar substance to the Father, but not the same. And then from over here, led by the brilliant scholar, the pupil of Alexander of Alexandria, Athanasius, he rose and spoke and he said, no, the Lord Christ is homoousios, the same substance as God. And that is what the Council of Nicaea decided, and that became the Christian belief. It was put into our profession of faith that most Christians abide by. This was the net result of the Council of Nicaea. And contrary to being celebrated throughout the land, it was quite contentious because it wasn't the majority view of Christians at the time. It would take a long time for it to establish and take root. Let's find out what happened next. That first generation of Nicene Christians fought as hard as they could. They influenced a great number of people to their cause. Unfortunately, you also see some of the dirtiest politics in church history between the end of the Council of Nicaea in 325 and the year 380, when they called a second ecumenical council in Constantinople, now the seat of Roman power, and reaffirmed what had been done by Nicaea. This brings us to the era that we're in now, that we're looking at. The first generation of Nicene Christians has passed away, It has in fact become the orthodox view of Christianity. Between the year 380 and 420, it was a tough time for the Western Roman Empire. The Goths had continued to try to immigrate and assimilate, and eventually found that they were stronger than the Roman Empire in that area, and they would sack the old city of Rome for the last time. The church and her establishment moved to first Milan, and then finally to a swamp city called Ravenna, where they felt like they could protect themselves. The next thing we're going to do is take a look at the map so we can find out who the players were and where they were at before we get into our council for today. Here's Italy, and here is the Roman See. As I explained to you, they ended up moving their capital to Milan and eventually to Ravenna on the Adriatic Sea. The Goths that had been pressing on the Roman Empire for generations under their leader Alaric had been coming down, down, down. History names them as barbarians, but they really weren't. Initially, they were seeking assimilation into the Roman Empire, and only as they gained strength and the empire began to collapse did it become a military expedition. Rome is one of the major Christian centers. There were 5. The other one is the North African coast, Alexandria. So we have Rome, we have Alexandria in the west. Then in Syria, we have Antioch, another major Christian see. Down here we have Jerusalem. And finally here we have Byzantium, or what would become Constantinople, where the first Council of Constantinople took place. And then right here, the port town of Ephesus, where the council we're talking about today took place. So to recap, 5 major Christian cities: Rome, Alexandria, Jerusalem, Antioch, Constantinople. Now here's the sources we're using to understand what happened today. Let me give you the characters, okay? In Rome, you had a bishop named Celestin. In Alexandria, you had a bishop named Cyril. In Jerusalem, you had a bishop named Juvenal. In Antioch, the bishop was named John. And in Constantinople, the bishop was named Nestorious. And he is the subject matter of this discussion because he wrote a document that tended to classify all the heresies from the pre-Nicene era up through the present, but there were 2 particularly that left very interesting questions that the faith had not answered. 1, yes, okay, Jesus is homoousios, the same substance as God, but what does it look like? Is he half human, half God? Is he totally human? Is he totally God? Is he totally human and totally God? And the second one, well, if you're going to call Jesus Christ homoousios, the same substance as God the Father, consubstantial, one in being, co-eternal, co-equal, what does that make his mother? Is she Christotokos, the mother of Christ? Or is she Theotokos, the mother of God? It's a big question. It's almost a logical next question in the progression. So, from Rome, the Bishop Celestin, who doesn't have a lot of power right now, writes to his boy Cyril down in Alexandria and says, hey man, you seen all this stuff that Nestorious has been writing? And Cyril goes, oh yeah, I don't like him, man. He and I have been exchanging letters already, and his stuff is kind of funky. I'm not sure what to think about this dude. So they begin a letter writing campaign back and forth, and Cyril tries to write a few letters to Nestorious. They did know each other, and he says, hey man, what's up? What's up with this stuff you're writing? We see all that here in volume 14 of the pre- and post-Nicene Fathers. We also get good information about this council from one of the early church historians named Theodoret. We have letters that were exchanged. We have the full documentation. We have what happened at the council. In the West, Alexandria and Rome, they kind of form a tacit alliance, and they decide, okay, we're going to try to influence this situation. So they decide to call another ecumenical council at Ephesus. Ironically, Ephesus is the city where the beloved apostle John had taken Jesus' mother, Mary, to live out her life. So it has significance there. So those are your players. And Cyril wrote a complete account And these 2 letters he had sent to Nestorious himself, Cyril told Nestorious that Celestin had asked him, Cyril, to send Nestorious this info. Hey bro, what's up? What are you doing here? Celestin writes, upholding what Cyril said and undermining what Nestorious said. It becomes like a political deal, like a political hit job. In addition to the disagreement over Nestorious, Nestorious was unwilling to call Mary Mother of God, and his teachings on the person of Christ, if he doesn't reverse his views in 10 days, he should be removed from his episcopate. Remember, he is the Bishop of Constantinople. Constantinople holds way more power right now than Rome. So now you start to see the underlying thing politically between East and West. So Nestorious was popular. He enjoyed the favor of the Emperor Theotokos in the East and of all the great men. So this Ecumenical Council gets called. Now let's go find out what happened during it. So just to show you that the Council of Ephesus has all the markings of a political hit job, the Emperor sent a representative, the Count Candidian. The Bishop of Rome didn't show up. He said, oh, Cyril is representing me. Cyril from Alexandria. They had set up a seat, a witness stand for Nestorious, and upon finding this out, Nestorious refused to even show up. So this council comes down to a debate between the teachings of Cyril and Nestorious. And when that happens, I found in the documents a very interesting set of words that were used over and over again. Now, this is in 430, and they're talking about the fathers of the church. Well, who could those be in the year 430? It's remarkable to me that they're referring to the fathers from Nicaea that had established the council process as fathers. So they're going to weigh their words as an authority over how to proceed. And in addition to that, they're going to also use what they call the rule of faith, which is the Christian profession of faith. I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. That was the most substantial thing to come out of Nicaea. Theodosius II, he wrote to Cyril, council's called, they're all there, they're in the room together. And the argument comes down to a couple things. One, Cyril versus Nestorious and their teachings. While Nestorious didn't show up, they were left to essentially debate these issues on their own. One of them would get debated, the other would get kicked down the road. What they ultimately decided was on the question of the Blessed Mother. 1, is she to be called Christotokos, the Mother of Christ? 2, is the Blessed Mother to be called Theotokos, the Mother of God? Well, if at Nicaea in 325 and upheld in Constantinople at 380, you really don't have a choice here but to call her the Mother of God. This becomes the second major Marian doctrine in the Christian faith. The first one coming from Nicaea and really coming from the New Testament, born of a virgin by the power of the Holy Spirit. 2, Mother of God. The second issue about Jesus Christ, is he all human, all God, half human, half God? This one's a little more complicated, and the can gets kicked down the road. It will be addressed at the next Ecumenical Council in about 20 years in the city of Chalcedon. Until that time, we're going to continue to look at the church history between now and then and see what happened and why. Listen, before we go, I want to ask your help with something. I'm in the middle of trying to build my church history ministry to take it in public. I have a P.O. box now where you can reach me. I will put it in the About page here on YouTube. You can become a channel member and join. One of 3 levels. Twice a month, we do a members-only live stream where we talk about the ministry, the work, what we're doing, and I use it as a sort of accountability to get feedback from people watching the channel to see where they think we might better succeed. You can also click this super thanks button right here, and that gives us a little something. If you like to use electronic means, there's PayPal, Cashapp, Venmo in the video description. You can also read one of the books that I've written. You can get them on Amazon.com/author/Nicholas Garrett. You can get Just Tell Me the Truth About the Crusades, an easy read, 200 pages, 400 primary source footnotes, less than $10, and for your Kindle, just a few dollars. You can get this book, Just Tell Me the Truth About the Future of Christianity. An important read for people who are running churches because it focuses on the soul care aspect, the psychological bent, understanding denominationalism, and how the church might move in the future. You can also pick up a book on the early church councils there, but I will let you know that that book is going to be undergoing a major renovation here very soon. If you're interested in world history, Shipwrecked in the Land of King Tobacco, the first Washington family immigrant to America. George's great-grandfather John has a much more interesting story than even George has. You can get all these on my page, again, for paperback or for your Kindle. There are other ways you can support us. Across all the platforms, there's various ways. Subscribing, like the videos, comment. Even if you don't agree with what I say, comment, because it helps the algorithm and it helps generate interest in the work that we're doing. God bless you, and I hope that your work today bears fruit.